Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting for Thursday, March 27th, 2025. We have a quorum, so let's get started. We have on the agenda Article 3, and then we have Articles 10 through 16 as well. Where would you like to start, Jim?
Let's just get right into Article 3. I don't think there's much to do on this. I think you all have the memo dated March 24th, in which I outlined the proposed motion. Budget set to go. I know there was some talk about kind of seeing what to do, but as you know, we had the discussion with the school department, and we'll basically address it in the fall. It was general consensus among the FinCom, school committee, and select board. So this is ready to go. We successfully had negotiations with the unions, and they were great. We agreed to reduce the health insurance rates by about 4% by kicking in a little bit higher on the deductibles and a little bit more in the copays, but not anything significant, but it was able to bring it down 4%. So pleased with that.
So the budget that we're approving is your recommended budget number for the schools?
Yes.
Correct. And then the goal is to hopefully find additional revenue sources to come up?
One way or another.
Perfect. Open it up to questions.
So if you'd like, I have the motion as outlined in the memo dated March 24th, and if you'd like, I'll read it. So,
Sure.
Move to accept the proposed budget as presented, which totals $124,843,890, and further that the Finance Committee recommends the town meeting vote to fix the salary and compensation for elected officials as provided in the general laws 41-108 for the services for the fiscal year commencing on July 1, 2025. Approve the new salary schedule as on file with the town clerk, and note that the appropriate following sums for the operation of municipal and school departments and incidental expenses for the town of Walpole fiscal year 2026. And the sums are listed below. Any questions?
Any questions? We have a motion?
I'll make a motion for favorable action based on the motion on the memo dated March 24th, 2025.
Got a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Mark.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstained? And it's 14, right?
13.
13.
So
Yeah, you're right.
Audrey and Susan.
Okay.
So next up, I asked, per your request, to have Pat Duchesnes and Jim Crowley join us tonight to go over Articles 10 through 16. I did invite the entire planning board. I don't think they were able to make it clearly. So Patrick did type up a summary of each article, kind of outlining the information contained in each one, because they go on for pages. So with that, would you?
It's a great summary. Thank you for that. So let's start at Article 10.
Yeah.
This is the Floodplain Protection Overlay District.
Yes, so periodically FEMA will update their maps. So this has to do with being compliant for the National Flood Insurance Program. What goes along with that is certain regulation, and the language of the regulation that we have before you is it's replacing what's there. This article really kind of came about from conversations with DCR. So they reached out to towns that were impacted by the change in the new maps and really went back and forth with them. They had a model bylaw that had compliant language that we needed to have so that anyone that was applicable was able to be covered under the National Flood Insurance Program. So the language here really kind of comes from the state. It's just making sure that we're in compliance with federal regulations, essentially.
Any questions from anyone?
Do you know how many people would be affected by these changes?
So, from the change to the maps in general, they're just briefly, they're fairly similar to what is existing. There's some alteration and change in terms of the boundaries of the floodplain. I couldn't say for sure, really, but I would say by and large, if you are impacted right now, you likely are still impacted if you have flood insurance. So nothing's changed dramatically.
If there were changes, would residents be notified of,
To
Aside
change the
from-
maps?
Yeah, aside from us approving this at town meeting, if that's what happens, I can't imagine this is gonna greatly impact too many people, but if it did,
Yeah.
would they get notified that they now have to be aware of these new regulations, or?
So I know they do have, they have brochure and informational material that towns can have available for residents. Whether or not they're notified directly from the insurer, that probably is something that I needed to know, but the town wouldn't notify them, no.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, so they'll probably realize it when they're going to sell or they're going to refi, right?
Likely.
The lenders, and I should know, but are the lenders actually relying on, are they relying on the local adoption of this, as
Yeah,
opposed?
so it's interesting, I wrote it a little briefly in the write-up, but I guess Massachusetts before has had, most of the language in compliance, but the change here is kind of having the full federal language that every town needs to have in their local, local zoning or local, building code. So some towns handle this as like, if you were gonna go get a building permit and your home is applicable, you need to check off the criteria and then the building commissioner will sign off. Other towns like us, we have a special permit process where, again, if you're doing work within the floodplain, you need to go through the process. And the zoning board needs to make sure you're in compliance before they can grant you that special permit. But, yeah, I mean, by and large, I mean, any town that was applicable was notified by the state first. So it wasn't something I went searching for. They kind of reached out to us to make sure that we were up to date.
But you're just not familiar with how many folks are affected, potentially who may need flood insurance that aren't currently required to.
Offhand, I don't know the number. I just, from looking at the maps, nothing was a drastic change from what is already there. And that's just a broad look at what was there. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, typically, it's the lender's response. If you have a mortgage on your house and you're new to, and all of a sudden you're in a flood zone, the lender will say, hey, you gotta carry flood insurance. If you own your house and you don't have a mortgage on it, it's up to you to figure out if you want or need flood insurance.
Other questions?
So will your insurance carrier contact you on that? No.
No, because they don't cover floods. Your regular insurance carrier doesn't.
Say you hang out to drive, that doesn't work there.
Hang out to get wet.
Yeah, it's basically it's on you to find out or figure it out. If you have a mortgage, your mortgage company will tell you you need flood insurance.
And this change is required,
This changes, yeah, the local regulation change is required.
so we don't really have much say.
Well, if we don't do it, then anyone that's applicable wouldn't be able to file for wouldn't be able to get flood insurance.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important that we make the change before the update in the maps, which is July 8th of this year.
Excellent. Other questions on Article 10? So the planning board hasn't voted or done anything on this
Haven't had the
article
public
yet.
hearing on it.
The select board?
What's
the select-
So they voted to sponsor it, they were supportive of it for all these articles. Planning board politely said, thanks, but no thanks on everything. So the select one went ahead and sponsored all these, so all of them have the support of the select board at this point.
Do we have any comments from any members of the planning board on anything here?
Yeah, I think so.
I support it. I'm on the zoning bylaw rewrite committee with
Okay.
Patrick and
Great.
Jim.
So I'm going to ask the question, do we want to vote on this or not? Historically, we've waited till after the planning board votes. I will say my opinion is I don't fully understand why. We get our information, we make our own independent decisions, vote from there. So I would like to vote on this, but that doesn't mean we have to. So
I'd like to wait, just 'cause
Okay.
I'd like to hear what they say, and they're obviously familiar with the zoning bylaws, and, I'd like to tune into the hearing, and if they do appear after.
I think, Doug, you feel the same way, everyone else? Wait?
I have a question.
Yes.
If hypothetically, the planning board is not backing, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're not backing any of these articles. They're not supporting it, which is why we have, correct me if I'm wrong,
Decided not to sponsor it.
they're not to sponsor it. So what's the difference between them sponsoring it, which it comes under their purview, and the select board sponsoring it. Because the way I'm looking at it with very little information is that if the planning board, and this is their purview, is not sponsoring it, what is the problem with it? And are they gonna actually bring it forth on April 3rd where they're not sponsoring it?
So the way the logistics of this is, in the past, they did sponsor some articles.
Correct.
Recently, I don't know, in
It's a
the last
toss-up.
5 to 10 years, they've decided not to sponsor anything. Maybe they've sponsored a few, but very, very few. So the select board, with all of these articles, are in a spot where, well, we need to make changes to this flood insurance. The zoning rewrite committee went through on Articles 11 through 15, made some thoughtful changes, had some recommendations. Again, they decided not to do it. I checked with them myself, so the select board are put into a position where they're sponsoring it. I don't think I don't know if all of them are supportive of Article 16. There's been some questions. I think Patrick will later explain why we're required to do 16. It's their decision. They're elected board. They don't report to me. We don't work for them. We work with them. And that's what they've decided to do. So the select board decided to do that. Their function is to simply hold a public hearing, and they could, generally, the chair and the members of the board ask their questions or whatever, and vote. That's what they're required to do by law. Generally, they recommend or don't recommend it, and when Jim Brady stands up, asks for their vote, planning board voted no action, 1 to 4, so whatever the vote was. So that's kind of where we're at here. If they voted things down in the past, the ADU, last time ADU came up, they voted it down and it still passed town meeting. So they just have to have a vote in a public hearing. That's what they're required to do.
It's
by law.
mandated for them to
Yeah,
do that
by
April
Mass
3rd.
General, yeah.
So that, I was just gonna follow up on you. So that's Mass General Law, it's the zoning law, Section 5. So in terms of sponsorship, or bringing an article forward, it can either be the planning board, select board, zoning board, and I believe it's 10 residents in town, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim. You have property owner. So there's like a whole list in terms of like who is able to bring in forward a zoning article. And then in terms of the public hearing process that planning board does, that's also just a part it's like a regulatory process before it can go to town meeting.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Philip Zakarowski, Precinct 7, member of the Planning Board. I don't think you should read into it that that because the Planning Board did not sponsor the article, they're not going to vote for it. I can't say what the board will vote, but I don't think you should read that necessarily what will happen. Among some members of the Planning Board, there's a philosophical issue where they don't think the Planning Board should initiate zoning bylaw changes. So that's a philosophical thing. It's not one that I personally agree with, but that's been mentioned at board meetings, and nothing that has been publicly mentioned. At the hearing, there weren't really a lot of pushback from the planning board members, or not the hearing, but when Patrick
meeting on
presented. So so don't read into anything, and hopefully, this will go through. There are 2 members of the planning board who are on the zoning rewrite committee, myself and John O'Leary. So the planning board is well represented, and we have been reporting back to the planning board, and we'll, I'm expecting that we will be very vocal at the hearing as needed.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask for whatever motion you want. I will say I would like to vote on this. So if someone votes for, at town meeting, I would vote against, I'll vote against that motion, but whatever
Either.
everyone decides to do.
Vote favorable action on Article 10, or vote recommendation at town meeting.
Or no action.
Or no action, yeah.
Those are the 3 options we have. So if someone wants to put forward a motion?
I have a question.
Yes.
Could we not take a vote on, prior to the public hearing?
We cannot do it, the public hearing starts at 7, so we'll have to do it after the public hearing,
Oh, gotcha, okay. So that
because it's
won't
been posted for that.
And we go to print for the.
And so it'll be in the booklet.
work. I withdraw my question.
Oh, no, your question is fine, but those are all the things just to note.
I got it.
And whatever everyone decides to do as a group, I'm just putting forward my opinion and open to, I mean, there's no good answer here. I'm just,
Sorry, the planning board's meeting on April 6th?
Fourth.
Third.
And then we're meeting again,
the 17th?
okay.
is our public hearing, which is scheduled to start at 7.
Right.
So we'd have to open the public hearing, do the public hearing, close the public hearing, then have our discussion and vote on Articles 10 through 16 after the public hearing, which is all fine. I'm just putting forward my opinion, doesn't mean I'm right.
No. Yeah. I don't know if you'd entertain a motion or a substitute motion to wait until the 16th,
So-
until after we hear from the planning board.
If someone just puts in a motion to, a recommendation at town meeting, that's the motion that goes forward, and we vote on it, and if we vote against it, we can do a different vote.
But when you say recommendation at town meetings, you're talking about,
We've actually voted on, that's what will go in the book
Yes.
right, but the vote could actually happen
at the public hearing.
at the public hearing,
Yeah.
and/or just prior to the town meeting,
Yes.
which is not
Yes.
necessarily
Yeah.
a great idea.
But when we go to the public hearing, Articles 10 through 16,
Gotcha.
we will not
Yep.
be able to have an opinion on,
Yep.
because we didn't vote.
I'd prefer to vote tonight, because it's not like my opinion's gonna change, you know.
That's my thought process, but again, whatever motions comes forward,
So,
is how we'll vote. I'm just letting people know.
Really beneficial.
I'm going to move for favorable action on Article 10.
So we have a motion for favorable action in Article 10.
I second that.
We have a second.
Okay. What's the motion? I'm sorry.
Favorable action.
Action on 10.
So if you vote yay, we are voting for favorable action for this. If you vote no, you're voting against
You have
it.
to
And
have
if
a
it doesn't,
substitute motion to put something in the.
Then you need a
And which
motion.
are-
we could then vote for recommendation town meeting, whatever from there.
And we're speaking now about articles.
10, just
Just
10.
Just 10.
Okay,
So we can do this for each one.
gotcha.
But we're going to try to move fast so people can make it home for a reasonable hour.
And you
right.
can abstain.
And you can abstain as well, yes.
Well, that was my question, is, I'm in favor of this, but I'd rather the vote after the planning board.
Yeah.
And so I don't want it to be a no vote, because it's a no vote.
Yeah.
So, okay.
No, that's a great point.
Clarification, Jim, since we have 14 people, if it's 761, does the motion carry?
Yeah,
Okay. It doesn't have to be a
the
majority.
majority, of the- yeah.
It's the
Majority
majority.
of
It just
those
has to have a
voting.
winning vote. Got it. Okay.
If we have a quorum.
I'd
Yeah.
rather vote for it because this is beneficial to the
All right.
homeowners.
Motion
So-
second.
We have the motion second, so we'll have a vote. All those in favor, say aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Those against? 0. Those abstaining? 2. 3. Sorry, Bill, I didn't see.
Okay.
Guess I squeezed
Yeah.
you in, Bill.
No.
Oh, yeah, that's why I was off. You came from, you weren't here for the first vote, the math.
Sorry.
I was like, how the hell did we get an extra? What did I screw up the first time?
No.
All right, so 10 is favorable action, 1103. And again, if things change,
And I
we can always reconsider this after the public hearing.
to the homeowners, that's the way Patrick explained it.
Article 11, Pat?
All right. So Articles 11 and 15, I'll give the Reader's Digest version, the small version. But basically, these articles are a result of conducting, or what we started to conduct, which is a zoning bylaw review and revision, or like a recodification process. So as part of that process, I was able to seek funding from the state to bring in a legal consultant that would be able to conduct a full audit of our zoning, as well as assist with drafting and writing of amendments. The reason being is, as years go by and new things get put in and stuff gets taken out, sometimes zoning bylaws, then you gotta go through a cleanup process to get language to be consistent with current state law, to remove inconsistencies, outdated language, or just kind of areas in the zoning bylaw that are hard to interpret or don't fully make sense. So as part of that process, we were able to have KP Law, which is our town council, on as our consultant for the project. As Phil had mentioned earlier, the select board appointed a steering committee, 2 reps from the planning board, 3 at-large members, and 2 ex officio members, me and Jim Crawley. The planning board representation is Phil Chekarowski, John O'Leary, and then the members at large are Ed Forsberg, Sarah Katib, and Tyler Church, although he moved out of town, so we are down a member. So these 5 articles that are in front of you, these kind of represent what is our first phase. As we go through the zoning bylaw, we're really trying to kind of clean up section by section. These, sections 1 through 4 in particular are kind of that formation of your zoning bylaws. There's a lot about, there's the general provisions, administration, enforcement, establishment of the districts. Those languages kind of set up before you get into the heart of the zoning bylaws itself. We included changes to section, bouncing around a little bit right now, but we included changes to section 7, which is our sign bylaw. That's Article 15. That one only because the changes recommended by council were relatively minor, and we figured if we could get that done now, we'd try to bring it forward. So what you're looking at, I guess, for Article 11 is our general provisions. So changes in here, really, we're just trying to bring the language to be concise, reference state law properly, rather than, we've had issues where we've repeated state law verbatim, but then wasn't written correctly, and so we were actually counter to state law. So rather than situations where we are just repeating state law, we reference state law within these sections to try to just make the process defer to the state zoning law. So I'm happy to kind of go through and take any questions. I won't.
I think the best way, let's get into questions from anyone specifically. So this is Articles 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 all at once. We will vote them all separately, but open to questions and discussion now.
Yeah, that works.
So we're referencing Massachusetts general law. If they change the general law, but keep the same numbering references, we've automatically adopted whatever the state changes.
That's exactly it. Yep.
Say that one more time.
So, like in Article 11, effective dates, we're referencing provisions of Massachusetts general law. If the state changes whatever it is in those sections of the general law, we've automatically adopted those. We don't have to go back to the table and reapprove.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So, clarifying, this is more than just housekeeping.
Well,
Or
I
would you
guess
put it under that category?
I mean,
as we
housekeeping's
have
pretty
in the
broad.
past?
I would say, housekeeping by and large, but I think we're trying to clean up and make the language easier to read and to digest and understand. If that qualifies as housekeeping, I would say yes.
Clarifying it better than
Yeah,
what is
better
so
clarified.
written. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions, sorry.
I have a question on Article 12. I guess it's under Section 2. It has to do with the Board of Appeals. And under A, it's very specific that the building inspector hears and decides appeals, or that, I'm sorry, that the Board of Appeals hears and decides appeals on the decision that the building inspector makes. I guess my question is, I know the building inspector wears many hats, parking police and all that wonderful stuff, now sign police too, I think. But is he the only one who ever makes these decisions? Is this too specific to the building inspector? Should that be more broad, or?
No, so the building inspector is also our zoning enforcement officer. So the times where an applicant or a resident would appeal his decision, it would be appealing a situation where they disagree with his interpretation of the zoning bylaw. So that's where it's referenced.
So it
within
should
state.
always be him?
Yes.
Yes, so part of it is, if you come in for a building permit, you usually file for a permit, and we respond by saying, you can do this, but under a certain section, you need a special permit, or you trigger a variance, and then it goes to the board. Or somebody can go to the board and say, well, you don't require to be in front of us for this. So under the zoning, as one of the zoning enforcement officer, you come to us and ask, what do I trigger by doing this? And we go, it's a permit, it's a special permit, or it's a variance. And we give them the section cited, so they get their forms and everything from Patrick. We fill it up with them and say, this is the section you are appealing. So they know where they're heading.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So just so I understand, stylistically, if these are adopted, and you're doing this in pieces, right? So you're gonna.
Yeah.
So at some point, is it gonna be a new book? Are you replacing, and I'm sure the planning board is gonna have these questions for you, like,
Yeah.
so I'm looking at section 2.
Yep.
It doesn't look like there's any changes, right? The only changes that denoted with anything that's either struck through or underlined, is that?
So the reason why we did the remove and replace is just because the ones where strike through and underline were almost unreadable. So that's probably that's why what we have is remove and replace except for the changes to section 7, because there were just minor corrections here and there. So what do you see? Most of that language is still kind of consistent with how it's written. However, it's been clarified, I guess.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like, special permits, variances in sections 2 and 3 on pages 8 and 9 here, obviously they're governed by 40A, sections 9, 11, 15. So were there any substantive changes? Because we really can't tell. If there were changes, then it's just tough to decipher here.
So aren't the changes underlined?
So, within the warrant, the article's being proposed as a remove and replace. We can add to, whether in town meeting packet, just a reference where people can find, online, where I have the cross-outs and the underlined version.
Yeah, I see a few of them here.
Yeah.
It's just, but, for the general sections, again, I'm assuming there's nothing substantive, right? Because you have to comport with
Yeah.
chapters 48. But
Yeah.
it'd be good to know if there was anything that, potentially could be interpreted as substantive.
No, I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it was just really a matter of trying to, obviously provide within the packet, reference to where people can find that language, but within the warrant itself, it added like another 10 pages, and it was almost unreadable, so that's why we went with the cleaner version to see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And anyone from the ZBA sit on the committee, or were they not?
No, so the composition, how we went about that, it was conversations I had with town council, who was our consultant on it, and it was a recommendation of, a couple ideas. If you want to do, a 7-member board, you want to have ex officio members, planning board members. I definitely want to be sure to have planning board representation for sure, but we didn't think of it for this version.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
Other questions? Comments, thoughts? Seeing none, do we have a motion for Article 11?
Make a motion for favorable action on Article 11.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Scott? Let me get my notes back, sorry. Susan, Scott. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? I have 4. 10-0. 10-0-4. And then Article 12. We have a motion for Article 12.
Motion for favorable action, Article 12.
Excellent.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those that want to abstain? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a growing number.
We're losing ground.
So we're 9-0-5. Next is Article 13. We have a motion.
Motion for favorable action on Article 13.
Second?
I'll second that.
Great. And all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? None. Those that are abstaining? 1, 2, 3.
No.
4? Bill, yeah, you're leaning back here, buddy. Come on, put that hand forward more. So 4, 10-0-4, thank you. Article 14, do we have a motion?
Motion for favorable action on Article 14.
I'll second that.
Sue? All those in favor? Does anyone need a minute?
No, for the 15.
Good. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those that are abstaining? 1, 2, 3, 4. Article 15. We have,
That or answer any questions. This one's a little bit different than the other ones, just because it's, where the other ones were a clean replace, and this is kind of broken up for a few sections within our sign bylaws. As we reviewed that, there could have been more substantive changes in terms of if you really want to take an in-depth review, but from a compliance standpoint, town council didn't really find much fault with this one. So that's why the changes here are kind of broken up and are done as struck through and underlined, just because you need to with, picking out the individual sections of the bylaw.
What kind of signs, like, are these signs that the town of Walpole puts up, or
Oh, no, so this,
people put in their yards, or like, what kind of?
people put in their yards, businesses, so just like with anything else within the zoning bylaw, there's different regulations based upon where your property is and what you're looking to advertise. So your sign bylaw, if you're in the highway business district, you want to have an awning sign or anything like that, or if you're at home and you want to have a temporary sign, everything is regulated within our sign bylaws. So the changes here are relatively minor. There are areas where town council wanted us to kind of correct or include additional information.
Question, sorry, Ron.
I have one, and it's in regards to this, 3I.
Yep.
Constitutionally protected political and non-commercial signs. Around town last, unfortunately, we had ones that were obscene
Yes.
signs, related to politics, but is there any, do they still get protection with this? I mean,
They do.
especially the ones that were right beside schools. I mean, it was just,
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything that we can put in that you can't, obscene signs, or, I mean?
Jim, you
Yeah,
answer that.
go right, yeah, I just get a microphone somewhere. Come on up.
There you go, Jim.
Wanted to hide. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, we've had a lot of signs, and we've probably had a contentious last 4 or 5 years with signs, so this is where it's been going, and obviously the signs you're speaking to. Political signs are protected. We did bring it back in this section for the political, because we had some issues in the last few years, especially this year, with residents. So it was originally in it, it was taken out because it's protected under the First Amendment that you can have political signs on your property. The problem with some of the signs that you were talking about, with the vulgarity on it, they are protected under the First Amendment. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. If it's a political sign, even with something vulgar written on it, we have no jurisdiction on it.
So if you just had, taking out the candidate's name that's all on these, and just put the first word, that still acceptable?
No, then we can actually, that's a sign, so that's just someone being basically vulgar on their property.
As soon
but
as the political thing is there, it's protected.
It's a protected use.
Okay. It's-
I got Mark and then Kathleen.
With regards to the political signs, we're not addressing the requirement that they remove them within, I think it's 48 hours after the election's over?
No, we don't have to put that in there because it's already under state law. So very similar to the polling stations.
Yeah.
You have to hold your signs and you have it back 150 feet. We don't have to put that in there either because it's already got a state law that protects us.
So if somebody has a political sign on their lawn and the election was 2 weeks ago, can you go and find them and have them remove it?
Yeah, we can go out and request them to remove it. We usually try to be nice up front. And then we can cite state law, so we can bring in the state inspector as well to back us up, saying, okay, you might want to listen to me, but
Yeah.
the state inspector will enforce their side.
Yeah, because I saw after November's elections, on Saturday, there were still signs on people's yards, and then there were some that were on town property that somebody had just stuck in the ground 200 feet from the polling place, but it was on town property, against the sidewalk, and it's still there.
Yeah.
It's like, why?
Yeah, so that's where we had a lot of controversy this year with political signs on town property at polling stations. We removed probably, I'm going to say 40 to 50 of them.
Okay.
Unfortunately, some we get called on, some we don't. We just see it as we're passing. But usually we get a phone call on it. Some, as soon as we leave, get put back up right away.
Okay.
It's a tough one.
But we do have the ability to fine people for having them out past the deadlines.
Yeah, we do have that potential.
Kathleen? Then I'll come-
Mine's along the same lines, and I probably should know this. Are flags signs?
No.
So political flags don't fall under this?
So again, political flags won't, any flag wouldn't fall under this, and even a political flag is still has to protect the First Amendment, so we've no jurisdiction on that.
So if I wanted to have a vulgar political flag and I kept it up on my property,
I cannot touch you.
Year-round.
You could take me to court, not even through the town, but as an individual, for violating your First Amendment. You could personally come after me, let alone not even the town.
I won't.
We're just wondering, I mean, who actually enforces, who decides someone is going to be fined after they,
I get that fun job. So we usually have a process, we're usually pretty good. If we're fining you, we're probably on the third effort for you to cooperate with us. So we usually go out, talk to people, explain what they can and can't do. If they tell us go away, then we'll go back and get a violation notice and give them a violation notice so it's on record. And we usually give them a time frame of removing it, same with building violations or any other zoning violation. We give you a time frame to amend it, and then after that time frame, we start accumulating fines every day.
okay. Thank you.
Just a, I guess, clarification, right, for the same constitutionally protected signs. If you are part of, it's because this is across all zoning districts. If it's, you know, heavy industrial or you know, the Ashmont Plaza, if somebody who didn't own that was to stick a political sign, like they don't have permission from the owner of that property, they're just sticking their sign there, then it can be removed, right? Because
Yes.
the owner didn't give permission.
Yeah.
Just making sure. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you for bringing back memories of constitutional law from a long time ago. Any other questions on Article 15? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Favorable action on Article 15?
Second?
Excellent. Sorry, I gotta switch back to my notebook. Mark, Sue, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unopposed, abstain? 1, 2, 3, 4. Article 16.
All right, so, I feel like I've talked about ADUs for the past 3 years.
I thought your job was just managing ADUs.
Just talking about it, changing it, thinking about it again. So essentially, as I kind of explained in my memo, last year when we made that change, that was more of us looking at our existing zoning and trying to find a way for it to be more efficient for homeowners and be, you know, have a certain change in control over it. Around that same time, though, as last fall, that's where Governor Healy came out with the Affordable Homes Act. It goes through the same process as any other act. It had to get approved by the legislator and was eventually signed into law this past August. With that, there was changes to the state zoning law. So that's that law we keep on referencing in terms of trying to be compliant with. Essentially, the governor made an accessory dwelling unit, as it was laid out and defined, a protected use. So same thing with, you know, a church or a school. It falls under the same category of state law that a municipality cannot prevent the construction of an accessory dwelling unit. With that, there were additional requirements that communities had to follow, and that's why the changes that we're proposing here are to bring us now into compliance with the new law. The biggest one is that we cannot prohibit detached. So before we were only attached only, and we had some certain regulations in terms of occupancy. We can't regulate occupancy. We cannot regulate if it's attached or detached. By and large, you really have to treat the use as a building permit and something that you would see similar to like a single-family home. Or in terms of, that's where the state wants that regulation to be. So our changes are fairly, the bylaw looks fairly similar to last year. We made it, there's a small correction to the definition that we had just to be compliant. We added a definition within the actual bylaw itself for short-term rentals. So we can prohibit short-term rentals like Airbnb. We just have to define the statute of state law, which is what we did. The one thing that gives us a, I guess, a little bit more you know, it's town to town dependent. If a town wants to go down this path, is if you can have a site plan review process. The steering committee, we talked about it and we thought of it as something that could be used for detached, just because it existing as its own separate habitable structure. The steering committee all thought that it may require a little bit extra attention from town staff. And Jim could talk about that too in terms of the limited site plan review process. We have that for like outdoor dining, parking, I believe, for Gillette. So that there's additional review that kind of comes in beyond just, you know, Jim's, you know, making sure they comply for a building permit. We'll, you know, bring in opinions from other town staff like fire and health and myself. So that process we separated as that limited site plan review for detached only. You know, and by and large, what we're changing, you know, obviously it's to be in compliance with the state law. Technically, as of February 2nd, the state law is the law of the land everywhere. So someone comes in tomorrow, you know, they want to apply for, you know, a detached ADU, we can't say, hey, no, we don't allow that. We essentially have to make sure they follow the state law, or we have to follow the state law. So the reason why we made changes to it is there's certain things that we can control in terms of certain like dimensional regulations or design regulations, and then like I mentioned, that limited site plan review process. Not every town has that. It's an option if towns want to go down that route. So there's a little bit of control, and that's why the changes we have. It's what, you know, what we need to be compliant, but also still have, you know, our own look at it, so to speak. So I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, yep. And we appreciate your work, and not that you need more on your plate, Jim, but just, I guess, just a general question. It was adopted, the governor adopted on February 2nd, but is this like an MBTA Communities Act where if you don't comply, then you're gonna be penalized at some point? So what would happen if we didn't pass this?
Won't get penalized, but I think that, Jim, you want to
Yeah,
explain?
so, again, this is under a protected use, one of the more stringent, which obviously, as Patrick said, is church and religion. I'm not quite sure any of you ties in, but if we decide we're not passing any law, if you come in tomorrow with a permit going, I'm building an ADU, I legally have to give you a permit or you take me to court. I have no choice, I have to give you one. So that's why they rewrote this to a degree, because it was cleverly passed on February 3rd, because every town meeting is around May, like ourselves, every meeting. So they brought in February 3rd to try and fast track it through everybody.
Yeah.
If some towns did, some towns weren't, and Patrick was smart enough to start a warrant article, because the way mass law works is if you bring in a warrant article and it's accepted, which ours have been sponsored by the select board, you're protected, even though it's not fully in law yet or accepted by the town. This article is in effect today. You're basically moving forward at risk. If it gets to town and passes, and then say the AG denied it, say it wasn't this article, but they denied an article, everything you would have done could be removed. But if we didn't have this article, warrant article written and already accepted by the select board, right now we'd be just in the guise of the state law, which is, I want an ADU. And that's the only protection you have, is I want an ADU. Sure. And I have to get, they could build it right up to the property line, they could put it right up on the road, they could stick it right on the neighbour's house.
Sure.
This gives us some, at least minimalist protection.
Yeah, and understanding the need for affordable housing, I mean, but effectively, we're almost eliminating home rule amendment in single-family zoning. That's really what's happening here.
Yeah, that's how again, so from my point of view, I do the zoning and the building, so this is a zoning use, so you're getting an ADU. So just give an example, if you attach this to a single-family home, it's built like a two-family under building code. So you're doing a fire rating between the units, it's, because under this, and besides the name, is a two-family. If you attach this to a two-family, that you have a duplex and you put an ADU onto it, you're sprinkling the whole place, because now it's technically a three-family under building code. State code says it's not a three-family, it's an ADU with a two-family. Building code enforces it, because that's what it actually is. So that's where it's gotten kind of getting some pushback from some towns, don't like it. It's a clever way of getting around single-family zoning.
Thanks.
On that note, today, someone applied, the building code still applied, what you just described, it doesn't matter
Yeah, it doesn't matter if we didn't have this in effect and we went by the state law, building code's still in effect, because this is.
After this,
It's still in effect, yeah, because this is ADU, people think that it's building, it's not. ADU is a use, so it's just that use. Building code still applies to it.
Technically, from the first time this was run in the paper for the planning board's public hearing, anyone had to come in and they had to comply with our law, our draft bylaw. So it's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring it forward this year.
So
I got Ron then Mark.
it has nothing to do with proving this, but if you had a large lot of land, multi-acres, could you put in multiple ADUs in?
We had the option to, so that was an optional thing for towns. If they wanted to allow for the provision of more than one ADU, you could have had language in your zoning that it's allowed by special permit. So the one thing every town had to have is you allowed to have at least one ADU by right. If you wanted to change your zoning to also include that, you could. We decided not to.
We decide not to limit it?
We decided to just limit it to the one by right ADU and not allow a
Okay,
provision.
so if someone, a developer comes in and saying, okay, this is a way to make extra money here,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna put 6 ADUs in, our language would not allow that.
Correct.
Okay, very good. It is very unfortunate, though, that the governor put it under the Dover Amendment. I mean, I've never seen, it's always been nonprofits and religion. It's just. Mark?
Through you. So the state law would override a lot of our zoning requirements for setback, density, and so forth?
Not necessarily. So the way it's written, when you're protected under the Section 3 of the state, you're allowed to impose reasonable restrictions.
And that's what we're doing here.
So that's
as
what
well.
we're doing here. So whatever we can enforce on a single-family home, we're allowed to enforce on an ADU. So we're allowed to keep the setbacks, because that's what we're allowed to enforce on a single-family home.
So if a person had 2 acres with a duplex on it, could each duplex have an ADU?
No, you're only allowed one ADU per principal dwelling.
Okay.
Sue?
So through you, so we're talking about as of right, but could you still apply for a permit to do what these gentlemen are asking about? Let's say you have a large lot of land, you could have one ADU by right. Could you also apply to have additional?
Only if you had it under your zoning. So, when the state changed the law, under Mass General Law, they all added a provision that, similar to the MBTA, that the state agency, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which is DHCD, if anyone's ever heard of that acronym, they made their rules and regulations for communities to follow. So the law allowed for this other state agency to provide these rules. And so they further explained that if a town wanted to, they can include that language in their zoning to have multiple ADUs, but it was not a requirement that you needed to have that language. So the only requirement that we need to have is that you're allowed to have one ADU by right, but there's no provision in our zoning to allow multiple.
So, if I may
Keep going.
follow up. So, this may not be a fair question, but I'm just curious. Do you have any sense for the demand in Walpole for ADUs? I mean, have you heard word on the street, people are dying to do this and do
It's
it?
fluctuated. So last year when we came forward, we had data from when it went to the zoning board. Before it was an accessory dwelling unit bylaw, it was an in-law suite bylaw, and it was regulated that it had to be essentially a third degree of kinship. Since that bylaw, I think that bylaw was around for probably 5 or 6 years, and the zoning board averaged about 6 cases a year. Since we changed last fall, Jim's only had 3.
3 of the old ADU, and right now, since this law came into effect, I've probably had 20 people in questioning and asking questions on it. I have 2 coming. One, they had to redesign it because it was breaking the requirements, so they're redesigning right now. So that should be probably coming back next week. And that was an attached ADU. And we have one standalone ADU that's in front of COMCOM at the moment. That'll be coming once they pass conservation. So they're going to be the first 2 straight after. But there is probably 15, 16 lots that people have come in for standalone ADUs.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
So that's a big change from previously. We
Yeah.
only allowed for
Yeah.
attached, so it
Right.
seems like detached is.
Yeah, that's
is
why I
a
was
difference.
curious to know.
I think the benefit, or not the benefit, but what people are seeing is, the first rendition of this from the state was you had to live in the primary house and you could rent a standalone ADU. They decided to take that out, and now you can rent the ADU and the primary house. You don't even have to live in it, so you'll probably see a lot more developers, businessmen, banks buying up property because it's a very good income.
So I got Mark, then Bill.
So, is this a workaround so that a person doesn't have to do a subdivision bylaw compliance to get additional units on a piece of property?
Not necessarily, so this would, so if you did do a subdivision, you could give an ADU to every single house in that subdivision. It's, you're tying one per lot, basically, for a building. So this is honestly a way around of not having single-family zoning in your town. So technically, we have two-family zoning everywhere right now.
So on a lot size, is there any zoning in town for residential that has a minimum lot size that does not exceed an acre and a half?
Yeah, so we have multiple zonings right now, so our largest obviously is rural, which is 40,000, almost an acre.
Oh, yeah.
Then it drops down, RA residential A is 30, RB is 20, GR is our smallest at 15,000. But with lot size doesn't matter to the ADU, because once you have your primary residence there, you need that already. It's a buildable lot. It might be a conforming lot, but it's still a buildable lot, so you're allowed to get the ADU on it, even if it's undersized.
Thank you. You may have already answered that. So, as far as developers and owners and renters, hypothetically, could a developer come in and construct a detached dwelling on an owner's property? Do they have to have separate ownership, or could a developer come in, potentially have a, some type of, I don't know, is it a manufactured home, is it something, some type of shed? Or do they need to be an owner?
You have to be an owner of the principal unit right now. There has been questions on, can you condo these? The state kind of stayed kind of quiet on it. We've got some legal counsel on it, and I agree with them on, this is tied to a principal unit that's an owner. So you have to be the owner of both the ADU and the principal. And you can't turn around in a year and say condo them, because then the ADU is not tied to any principal if you get split ownership.
So, yeah, so I mean, right now you can condo a two-family if it meets the dimensional requirements in the-
Yeah,
in the zone,
'cause
okay. But
then
this
you
would be
have two
different.
primaries.
Right.
But the ADU has to be tied to a primary, so if the primary is one, the ADU can't be a primary. It has to be attached to, or connected legally to the primary unit.
And sorry, the limited site plan will apply to whom?
Only detached.
Detached.
Any detached?
Anyone wants to do standalone, yes.
Attached right now, the way it's currently issued is a building permit, so we kept that the same. But detached, we just made a limited site plan review process.
Yeah, because a lot of Phil can speak to this as well, the board, when they were discussing it, no one seems to have any real issue with the attached unit, because it kind of was still, it's very similar to our in-law, and it's still keeping it looking like a single-family home. But having a standalone house with cars around it and everything, that makes it look like it's a separate dwelling unit. So they wanted that, at least a limited site plan where we look at it and say, if police, fire, health board need to come in and take a look, because, again, you could have your house on one side of the lot and decide, my lot's wide enough, I can put my ADU all the way to the left, right near your neighbour, minus the setbacks. You're creating something that's going to be, like if you put a shed over there, the odds on you being in the shed 24/7 is slim to none unless you're in trouble. So, but a family living in there, lights on at night time till 10, 11 o'clock at night, and you're next door to it. So that's why we wanted a limited site plan to at least, if you are going to go right to the edge of our setbacks, and we know you're going to be that close to someone's house, now we can ask for a shrubbery, you can ask for kind of a buffer zone, at least kind of keep that separation.
What about a driveway, parking?
So parking falls in, if it's within 0.5 of an MBTA, you do not require parking. But if it's standalone, you do, or attached, you do require at least minimum one parking space for that. Driveways, it depends on where the placement of it is. We have a stipulation through the fire code under 527 that if you have a skinny lot and you decide to put at the back of it, you need at least a 10-foot path to anything within 25 feet of the road. And if you're further up to 50 feet or back, you need a 20-foot wide road access. What they'll have to look at if you decide to go that way is our provision for still lot coverage comes into play for either structure and impervious surfaces. So an ADU is allowed as of right, but you can't violate our zoning. So if you're on a lot where you're already at 40% coverage with impervious and other buildings, and you want an ADU, you're gonna have to knock one of your buildings and make it work, because you can't exceed that 40%, and you can't ask for a variance on an ADU, because you're asking for a use variance, which we don't allow.
Thanks. Scott?
Yeah, my question was around parking as well. Don't we have isn't there a restriction on the number of cars that can park at a house? Does an ADU increase that, or do you still maintain the same number of vehicles?
No, so part of the ADU is, we have 4 cars as of right. So if your main house is 4 cars, the ADU automatically, as of right, gets at least a minimum 1 parking space.
One of those 4 or an
No,
additional?
an additional one. But if you want to say put 2 cars to it, you're gonna have to either go for a special permit to the zoning board for increasing your parking, because it's non-conforming now.
Other questions, comments on Article 16? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I move for favorable action. I like the idea of getting ahead of it and being able to put some restrictions on when we can.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
I'm going to put down April since,
No, oh, okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed? Are you opposed?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
And those abstaining? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 9, 1, 4, if I did my math right. And that is the articles. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the time. That was some good information and very helpful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So what we have left on the agenda are minutes from past meetings. Did everyone get them when I sent them out?
Yes.
Did everyone get to review them after I sent them out?
Yes.
Is everyone good to vote on them tonight? With feedback and comments from,
I provided my feedback on the minutes. I don't know if other people felt like there was information that was missing, but I felt like some of the meeting minutes were kind of light. So I know that, all this stuff is available on Walpole Media, so I'm not necessarily opposed to it. It was just,
so, well, let's go through the minutes. So we'll start, we have the meeting from Thursday, December 16th.
I'm gonna have to hover over your shoulder.
Yeah, feel free. So I'm looking at the computer where people have redlined some comments in it. So the meeting minutes as of would be based with the red lines, which is a lot of small stuff cleaning up of information. Any concerns, issues, anything else that anyone would like to add that didn't add? If seeing none, do we have a motion for,
Exceptions, so moved.
motion for, to approve, accept the minutes, yeah.
As amended.
As amended. Thank you very much.
ECC as opposed to EXC.
So, motion by Mark,
Second.
second by Jean. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? So the 16th is good. 1400, Audrey didn't make it. Okay, I thought you said 15, sorry. Actually, let me get the next date up. Of course, I just closed it. The 3rd, meeting minutes for February 3rd, 2025. We have some notes in red lines added, or I guess in my computer, they look like blue lines today. Everything was good for me. Anyone else with any comments, additions, changes, corrections? Seeing none.
Move to accept as amended?
Mark? Jean? Do it again. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? So meeting minutes for February 2nd are approved. This is the one I accidentally
February
closed. 3rd, thank you. And I looked at the date, I don't know why I just said it that way. There's the 10th, February 10th, 2025. Again, minutes with modifications. This is the one that you thought was light, or you?
Yeah,
I'll remove the question marks that someone had put in, and you added some more detail around it, which was appreciated. With that, any comments, anything to add, change on the 10th of February? Seeing none, do we have a motion? Anyone?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Kelly?
Everyone's asleep
Do we have a
at the wheel.
second? Jean? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Go from there. And then the last one are the meeting minutes for March 3rd, 2025, as amended. With the
March 3rd.
March 3rd. Sorry, I'll say it with a good Boston accent. March 3rd.
That wasn't a very good one.
You're right, it wasn't. I actually tried. Yeah.
Can I change my vote? I voted on the February 3rd one, and I wanted to abstain because I was not here.
Oh, sure, we can, you got that? Get that into the minutes, adjusted too. No problem. 1301, thank you. Okay. Anything for March 3rd?
Excuse me, they have me as present, I was absent.
I think I revised that,
Did you revise it? I'll get what I'm looking at. All right, thank you.
because they had Scott and you mixed up.
Okay, all right.
So I think I did revise that one.
On Denny's version, it says that you were present, you were absent.
And Scott, you were
I was here.
here, so we just have
So
it
did you
backwards.
not get the updated version?
I have updates here, I just don't know who does them, so that's the problem.
Okay. No, because I updated it to say that Scott was here and, you weren't, Steve wasn't.
Is it right? Scott, Steve, that's all similar.
This is the one I'm most uncomfortable with. I just felt like the minutes were relatively light. There weren't, a lot of the attendees weren't here, and I just. This is the
We
one
can
that
go
I'm
back
concerned
and
about.
review and work if, we don't have to accept them.
I will just abstain.
All right, well, then I'll ask for a motion, and we can decide what, people can vote on what they want to do on these minutes. I'm fine with the minutes as they are, so, do we have a motion for, do we have a motion for anything?
I would move them as amended and updated, because I think there is a version in there that's recent.
Okay,
I'm not sure.
I just
Where
made
it
the
is.
change, so that those are there. And it does have some additional information that's added, so. So we've got a motion for
Acceptance.
acceptance. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Great, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No one opposed, those abstaining?
I wasn't here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. And that is the end of our minutes. So Jim, they're all in there. Stephanie should have access to them, so if she can, I'll finalize them tomorrow. I'll accept everything, and then she can grab them. Should have just done that while I was here. I don't know why I didn't. I'll do that later. Give me something fun to do it tonight. Our next meeting is the public hearing, which is on April 17th at 7 PM. Is everyone, it's already scheduled, so let's hope everyone's good, but that's Holy Thursday. I just want to make sure for anyone who's religious.
You'll all have clean feet.
What's that?
You'll all have clean feet.
There, exactly, there you go. Perfect.
Sorry, Dennis, did you say the April 17th?
Yeah.
Was the next one? Okay.
Jim, are we still got a meeting posted for the 10th? We had talked about having it posted. That's not in, okay. All right, thank you.
My pen thief days are, oh, actually, I didn't write it. What was the last vote on 16? It was,
905.
It's the public hearing.
thank you.
No.
Sorry, no, I thought you were talking minutes,
914.
sorry.
914. Yes, thank you. I wrote it down on here, but not on the paper that I'll use for the memo tomorrow. Is there anything from anyone else? Conversations, topics, fun discussions?
Do we have to go back?
Or should we let Jim get to lacrosse practice?
Okay, question. The COA board today had Jamie from the library,
Yep.
and I feel because of her presentation, which was outstanding, it would really behoove for the next round of budgeting to have her do her 5-minute presentation of what the library has been doing, because it's more than just the books. For consideration, because I know you have a time thing and you've really trimmed it down, but there wasn't anyone that was in there, including the audience, that wasn't really impressed with what she had to say and all the new features that the library, I didn't know half of them, but that's only me. But I think it's doing a disservice for the amount of money that is given there, that we should be a little bit more aware of what the service has to offer.
She was here for when you guys talked budget, but I'll make sure next year.
Well, we'll get her in the November
Sure.
meetings to come in and talk when we have time and go from there.
But she really did an outstanding presentation, and there was several of us that thought that, geekers, this is a shame that more people are not seeing what the town has to offer. Not that they're slow over there or anything like that, because they do a tremendous business, but I thought we used to do that way back when, of having the different budget people come forward and give their comments as to what they were doing and such. I'm not faulting what you're doing, but I just thought her presentation was really outstanding.
No problem.
Wonderful. Anything from anyone else? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
1, second, 2, all in favor? Aye. I will see you the 17th.
I just have a quick question.